Hi there, this is the second video that I've made about non-domestic RHI applications, and this one is going to be quite short. It's specifically about the non-domestic questionnaire, and this questionnaire is required if you don't have a business rates bill for your non-domestic building, which is true for care homes and farms and probably other buildings. Also, if you have recently converted, say, a building to an office block or something, and because of COVID, you've not been able to get a business rates bill issued, this is the other route you would take. The other time you would use a non-domestic questionnaire is if you had two properties or more, two domestic properties connected to a heat network and connected to a heat pump or a biomass boiler, but you don't have council tax bills for the two properties. Again, COVID is delaying the issue of council tax bills, so in the absence of those, this is the route you would take instead. It's a Word document. You can, of course, fill it in yourself. If we were doing the RHI application for you, we would fill it in with information provided by you. Either way is absolutely fine, but there are some key things to be aware of when you fill them in. So this is the document in question. As I say, it's a Word document. First thing to do is to fill in your RHI number. You only get your RHI number when you get to the end of your RHI application. You don't have to submit the application, but when you get to either the last or last but one page, hit save and exit on your application and suddenly an RHI number is generated. So you've got to get all the way to the end before you can do the non-domestic questionnaire, which is a bit of a pain, but that's how it is. Just looking at the document here, there are 5 reasons to fill in the application. So the first one I've already covered, two or more domestic properties, especially where you don't have council tax bills. Secondly, a completely non-domestic space or process, that's section B. That might be a farm, a care home, or a building where you've just not been able to get business rates bills yet. C is a single domestic property and a non-domestic space. So that might be, for example, a farmhouse with a number of outbuildings. It might be workshops, it might be a holiday let. There are loads and loads of examples. That's just one that comes to mind. And that might be where you don't have a council tax bill or a business rates bill for the other non-domestic spaces. Just on that, a couple of years ago, Ofgem were accepting small offices attached to a domestic dwelling as being eligible for non-domestic RHI. That is very much not the case anymore. Just this week I had an inquiry about a holiday let that was going to be refurbished. It's not going to be done in time for the RHI deadline of March next year. Therefore, they're thinking about converting it into an office, but it's going to be a very small office. If the heat demand for the non-domestic building is smaller or the same as a domestic property, it is very unlikely to get through on the non-domestic RHI. Ofgem are looking basically to see that this is a commercial application. You're not just trying to get something through on the non-domestic scheme by trying to shovel in a little office or a little workshop. They just won't accept that anymore. Section D is a single domestic property that incorporates a non-domestic use. So that might be one building with an office. Again, this comes down to what's the heat demand for the non-domestic bit versus the domestic bit. They want to make sure that they're not paying non-domestic rates out on essentially a domestic application. And then section E, I've never filled in section E, but it's other. So I'm just going to go through section A and B because these are the ones that, A, B and C, because these are the ones that are most common. These are the ones I've done most. So section A, 2 or more domestic properties. First thing is they require you to provide copies of council tax for 2 or more domestic properties that are being heated. If they cannot be provided, this is where you fill in the information. And the key things here are, why can you not provide a council tax bill? You need to provide internal and external photographs of each property to demonstrate these are separate dwellings, and they should include images of the living space, kitchen and bathroom, and there will also be a requirement for showing front doors. So you can prove that these are all 3, 4, 5 separate properties, and they are not derelict. I've had a lot of queries about, well, how much heat do I need to be able to put in? Do they need to be furnished? the actual answer is yes, you need to show that these are properties that can be lived in, that are capable of being lived in, and they're not just, you're not just heating a big space that will at some point become a holiday let or a big office or something like that. That's not going to be acceptable to Ofgem. And basically you fill it in these text box. Section B is the non-domestic space, and again, this, as I say, this could be a farm, a care home. I've recently done a big wedding venue that didn't have its business rates bills issued because of COVID. You can see here there are questions A to G, which all need to be filled in. Things like describe what the space is used for, has it been structurally modified for its current use, who has access to the space, how many staff work there. Internal and external photographs, again, always requiring photographic evidence of the building inside and outside. In this case, it includes heat emitters. So you need to show there's radiators, fan coil units, air heaters, taps, showers, things like that. You know, just as much as you can put in there. We'll stop Ofgem asking further questions. And section G provides copies of any invoices or documentation that supports the non-domestic activities taking place within this space. So have a think about what you could potentially send in. It might be an invoice for sold grain or orders, or if you've got a holiday let, it might be all the bookings that you've had on that holiday cottage. So section B, that's non-domestic space on its own. And finally, section C, a single domestic property and a non-domestic space. So this is where it becomes quite in-depth, because the first thing it will ask is, what is the heat load requirement of the property, domestic? What is the heat load requirement with the non-domestic space, and how has it been calculated? So this is where they're really getting into the nitty-gritty of checking that the non-domestic space is a bigger heat demand than the domestic space. How many hours per year will the domestic property be heated? How many hours per year will the non-domestic space be heated? And make a thorough case that the installation is not generating heat predominantly for the use of non-domestic premises. As I said, this is because in the past they have allowed small, tiny little offices to be passed through, and really they shouldn't have been. So this is Ofgem tightening down on that. So you need to make sure that you are happy that you can answer those questions confidently. The second bit of section C is the same as section B, which is photographs, description of what space is for, staff, and copies of any invoices or documentation that demonstrates non-domestic activities taking place within this space. So this document can be found on the Ofgem non-domestic RHI website, but of course we are happy to provide help and support with this, and we do fill them in on a regular basis for people. They've become more popular this year, or more needed this year because of COVID. So if you have any questions or need one doing, then please get in touch via the website or via Google or via LinkedIn, places like that. So hope that's been helpful. Bye.